Hello, everyone. Before we get into our next example around arrays, I wanted to take a few moments and make sure we understood a concept that may have been taught earlier in one of your classes, or it may not have been. So with that said, I wanted to make sure we are all comfortable with the concept of an input box. And so if you have learned this before, there's no need for you to really listen to this video. But if you have not learned it before, I want to walk you through what input box is, because again, our next example for arrays is going to utilize one. It's relatively simple. What do I mean by this? Well, it's another way of actually collecting input from your screen. It's sort of like a message box, but instead of putting information out, it's actually collecting information. Let me give you an example of this very simple program. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit the go button, and it's going to ask me for two numbers. I'm going to provide those numbers, and the answer then will be in the total right here. Okay, you'll see what I mean by that. Okay, so in this case here, I say go, and it says input box example, enter number 1, I'll put 10 in there, and then it says enter number 2, and I'll put 20 in there, and the answer is 30. Pretty easy, right? So let's talk about how this is done in programming. How can we use this input box? I will tell you, I don't use an input box very often in my programs, but it's something that's there. And again, we're going to utilize it as our next example around arrays because it's kind of neat how it actually works. With that said, I just want to make sure you understand how to do them. So let's kind of go look at this program that I wrote real fast. So this program, on my button go click, I got two numbers, int number 1, int number 2 on my total. I'm going to go get these numbers, and I'm going to then calculate the numbers, and I'm going to display them, all right? So getting these numbers, this is how easy an input box is. Basically, it's an input box. You say the word input box, just like message box, and you enter here what you actually want it to say. I'll put some spaces there, okay? And so I'm enter number 1, enter number 2. And it will literally take whatever you provide, whatever inputs provided after the enter, and it will then put that to the left-hand side of the equal sign. So you see I passed these down as by ref, and I'm going to return them back. And then I took those, passed them down, did a little function to return the two numbers that were added together, and then finally display it. Pretty simple, right? Again, if I start this thing, I'm going to keep this code up here for a second. And I start this, pretty much what it's going to do is, as soon as I say go, it's going to come here, and this little line of code right here is what generated this input box. It automatically put the OK and the cancel there. Pretty cool, right? Pretty easy. And so with that said, I can put in the number, and then when I press OK, it's going to go to the next line and with another number and say OK. All right, and there's 40. So then basically when I got done with that, it came back up, passed this down, added the two numbers together, and displayed it. All right, pretty easy, right? I want to show you one more thing. Whoops, one more thing here. I guess almost kind of did show it to you. I'm going to we'll do it again though. If I start this, you'll recognize the fact that if I say go and I put in bad data, okay, such as this, it's going to abnormally end. Unfortunately, we can't really validate this like we could with the text box, right? Meaning the validation, it's going to try to move it over immediately to this int number 1. And so I made int number 1 an integer. So obviously it's going to run into an exception trying to make, KHSSA or whatever a integer, okay? And so how do we deal with this? There's a couple different ways and a couple different techniques. One technique might be you sit back and instead of actually having it return having it return as an integer, maybe idim, maybe idim str number 1 as string, okay? I'll put this here, and then basically what I'll do is receive this as a string, okay? And you might say, okay, that's all good, but now what? Okay, so let's just see. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop there. But if I actually do that and say go and put this in here, it will receive that. Okay, it actually received it, and you see that the numbers are actually 2. So str is a string in this case. It actually put a 0 there because I didn't move it to my int number 1 or number 2, so those end up being 0. but it didn't bomb, okay? Now, what can I do with this? Well, I still got to get it into my int number one, and here's where we can sit back and basically start validating and actually say if integer try parse, right? Integer dot try parse, and in this case here, str number one, if it actually is a number, we'll put that into int number one, just like that. All right. And so everything would be good. Whoops, everything would be good. If it's not good, else, what's going on here? Okay, and if, let's get that all in there. There we go. I got to put a comma right there. And I think all the reds go away. There you go. Else I could put a message box and do whatever I want to do and say, try this again. Now, how do I, so this does get a little more complicated, but then what do I do with this? So I put a message box dot show that says, no, number one has bad data, okay? And there you go. But what it's going to do is then fall out, all right? And we can do it that way. That's perfectly fine and say, click go again and try it again. Or what we can do is actually create a little loop here, right? And so I could sit back and kind of play around with this a little bit and say, like maybe I have dim, Boolean, good data. We'll do something like this, good data as Boolean, okay? And I'll make it equal to false. And I will say do until BNL good data equals true. All right, and I'm going to put that loop here. Whoop, not loop. There we go. It's always fun to code as you're talking, okay? So what am I doing here? Well, I'm looping around this. I'm going to say, I'm going to put my number here, and if this is actually good, using the try parse or is numeric, whatever you want to use, okay, I will sit there and say Boolean good data equals true. Now let's watch this actually work and kind of go through it. We'll watch this work together, correct? And what we can do is hit go. And we can see Boolean is false. So if I hit F11, it's going to walk into here. Whoops, function F11. There you go. And it's going to ask me for it, which it should. Okay. Function F11. There it is right there. I'm going to put bad data in here. And I'll hit OK. As you see, it's going to go down to, watch this work, the next one here, F11. It goes down to the else. We'll put the message box.show, number one has bad data. OK. And you watch the loop. It's going to go back up. Boolean good data is still false. I go through this again, and I'm saying try it again. Okay, so I'll give it a number this time. Press OK, and in this case, it's going to try to do the try parse, and it's now good data, and it actually falls out right there, and it goes through, and we got our number in number one. There's 60, and we can continue on with that. So that's a way to actually validate it and actually keep looping until they actually give me good data with my input box. And so I would do the exact same thing with my loop here and my input box here, okay? And probably what I'll do is I'll say Boolean good data equals false before I go into the next one, meaning I want to set this back to false, and I'm going to say enter number two. And we'll make this 2, and this is going to be, I can keep my string as number 1, who cares, str number, it doesn't have to be, in this case, yeah, I can use both of these. Matter of fact, I'll just do that, and I can use that same string for both of these situations. I can get it out of my way here. There you go. All right, and finally here. So in these two situations, once again, what I'm doing is I'm going to loop through these boxes until they're actually, you give me good data. So I'm forcing the user to give me good data without having to restart it back over again. Kind of a unique way to collect data, okay? And so on. Like I said, I don't use these very often, but this is what how this could actually work. All right, I'd say go, and in this case here, bad data, boom, bad, number one has bad data. Try it again. See how it still asks for number one? I give it bad data again. See, it's going to stay in that loop until I actually give it a good number. My second one, I'll test that out. Number one has bad data. I need to change that right there. And then I give it good data and everything's golden. And now my total is 50. Okay. What do you think? Does that make sense? Somehow I'm still looping. I must have hit it okay again. Okay, it's still telling me. Okay. And so in this case here, I got to put number 2 right there. And I will have this program available for you with this video so you can kind of get an idea how input boxes work. All right. And so this will help you, like I said, in the next example we're going to provide when it comes to arrays. And you're going to need to know how to use this for your actual assignments for this week. All right.